K-pop's interesting because I feel like everything's pretty thought out. What do you mean it's like a full box set? What do you mean it's a bound book with vellum in it? It's very, very glorified.
The VP of Creative and Content Development at RCA Records, Tonianne.
Viewer discretion is advised. Your fave will be criticized.
That's Chris.
That's Shan.
And we are CCTV, the nonstop pop show.
And today we are speaking to a very special guest, Tonianne, the VP of Creative and Content Development at RCA Records.
Looking for an awesome global pop music podcast? Chris and I have the inside scoop with extensive experience from performing on stage and working at music labels. We review and deep dive into your favorite artists, songs, and careers, and also interview music industry professionals, including artists, producers, choreographer, and everything in between. So join us at patreon.com/CCTVPops and become part of our amazing crew, including Lisette, Lily, Emily, Kevin, and Juliet. Subscribe now and let us explore the world of pop music together.
Yes. And we are joined today, as I said, by our very special guest, the VP of Creative and Content Development at RCA Records, Tonianne. Thank you so much for joining us today. You and I did work together for a few years. Our roles didn't cross paths too often, but you were always one of my favorite people to talk to at the office happy hours. And we've stayed in touch because you're an awesome person. And so I'm also very proud of watching your career growth and everything you've achieved so far in this very tough music industry. So yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So happy to be here.
All right. Well, before we dive in, just want to note, Tonianne's comments and thoughts are hers and hers only and are not representative of RCA or Sony Music or any of the artists she has worked with or currently works with. Yes, let's get the legalese out of the way.
Yes, that is correct. And full disclosure, everything I say is only what I know. I've only worked in certain aspects of the music industry at certain companies. So whatever I do say is only related to what I personally know. It could be totally different at a different company. So just want that out there as well.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very much. So just taking it back a little bit, going back to your childhood, what were some of your musical influences growing up?
Oh, yeah. So I am definitely dating myself, but I am definitely part of the TRL generation. So I grew up in the 2000s with Britney and NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. And I used to watch MTV and VH1 and TRL after school every day. And that was just like a really big moment in just pop culture at the time. And that was like my religion, basically. Like I used to go home and be like, TRL time, and wish that I was there. I grew up in New York and I was never allowed to go to Times Square. My mom never brought me. And I was like, why can't we go? I know now, like as an adult, I understand why we didn't go to Times Square and stand there for how many hours. But yeah, so that's generally like I used to sit there and like watch TRL and making the video and pop-up video and all of those. I really wanted to just like be immersed in that all the time. So that's generally like where it kind of like blossomed. My dad was also a musician, so music was always around in general in my life. My mom was like, you always listen to the radio. The radio was always on. She grew up on disco, like so I had a big wide burst of musical taste, and my dad was like anti-disco. I loved disco, which was really fun. And then when I was younger, I started getting into like pop music and the Spice Girls and NSYNC and Backstreet and Britney and Christina. And I just I loved everything about it.
Yes, this is why we're friends. So yes, you have a degree in graphic design and you were pursuing the music business very early on in your career with internships at major labels like Atlantic and Sony. So what inspired you to then take the step to actually want to work in the music industry?
Yeah. So back to, growing up in music and wanting to just like immerse myself in it at all times. I used to be on forums when I was a kid and I taught myself Photoshop, and I used to like make like backgrounds and little avatars and everything of like people's favorite musical artists.
Yeah.
So like that was like my little side hustle at like 13 years old, with like getting requests for people on different forums and making those. Whether it be like musicians or movies, like I did a bunch of like Harry Potter ones, like everything when I was a kid. So I kind of like started doing that. And then I was like on Zynga and MySpace, and I built different things for all my friends, and they made their MySpaces look great, and their Zengas and making banners and headers and all that stuff. So like that was a hobby of mine when I was way younger. And then when I got into high school, I primarily focused on art. I was always an art kid. I never played any sports. I sat there and colored. Like that was my thing. And yeah, so then I realized like I can actually like make it a career in a way. I was really heavily into photography when I was in high school, but then I realized like, oh, wait a second, like I can actually like do this as a job, and like very millennial mind process of being like, do what you love and make it your job. And it was like, okay, cool, I'm going to do that. So I ended up going to art school, and I studied graphic design and kind of just wanted to always do music stuff. I was like made my own different covers when I like had any projects or movie or posters, all that kind of stuff, tour posters, etc. And one day I saw that there was an opening at Sony Music, and I kind of just applied, and then I ended up getting it, which was great. So that was like my first like step in the door of seeing how the actual music industry worked, and I just like I fell in love with it.
Awesome. So what were some of your first internships like?
They were pretty basic. My first one was, my first internship was outside of music. But my second one was at Sony, and it was a generalized central system, which I can get into a little bit later. But it was a centralized system, and the team worked across all labels under Sony. So basically we went to work at the Sony building, which was really exciting, which is a different building than it is now. And we were stuck in our little cubicles, and basically we would just go to the different art directors and creative directors and ask if they needed help. So like we would do like logos or like help with little advertisements, like very, very basic type of things to help out any of the creative directors. But I worked on a bunch of different types of music. So there's Masterworks, which is a classical label. So I worked with a lot of classical artists and did a few artwork for like Leonard Cohen and all that stuff. And then I also worked on some things for Miranda Cosgrove when she was signed to Sony, and Beyonce. I got like a little like step in the door. I don't know if anything I did actually like went anywhere, but I was like, oh, I get to work on Beyonce. It was like the best thing ever. It was like very small. But yeah, it was very, very much a very basic internship. And then when I went to Atlantic to intern there, I did a lot more. It was a lot smaller. They actually had their own art department. So I was working one-on-one with those art directors and sat right next to them instead of being like in a cubicle. It was more of an open floor plan. So I got to experience a little bit more there than I did at Sony, because like there would be artists walking around and you could see like what's going on. And it was a lot more of a more immersed experience than it was at Sony at the time.
Oh, that's awesome. So you took your fandom and turned into a profit. Well, that's
kind of.
That's that's nice.
Yeah,
that's
basically.
Nice. All of us can do that. So it's inspiring.
Yeah, it was definitely like the fangirl to like worker trajectory in a weird way, because like I didn't study music. I never played an instrument. That was not my thing. But it was just basically like I just loved the whole vibe of the music industry, and it's not the same as it was then at all. Like you don't see artists on yachts anymore throwing money. You know what I mean? Like, it was a completely different vibe. I mean, even the industry as a whole, like does things completely different from what I assume it was back in the 2000s too. So I missed out on the fun part.
That's what I thought too. I loved like the artist development kind of aspect of how things worked. Like those stories about like how they found Britney's sound and all those things were so interesting to me, and they don't really do that anymore. And they weren't doing that by the time I started working at it either. So
I still I hold on to hopes of discovery that way. At a club and someone goes, "Great, thanks." But
yes. The Whitney model,
one day I'll be spotted, like that, the street casting. But you have gotten really far. So now you are at RCA as the VP of Creative and Content Development. So what does this kind of job entail?
Oh yeah, it was wild to even think about that. It's like imposter syndrome to the max. Like I think about it all the time, and I'm like, damn, like that's what I do.
You did an
which is pretty
amazing
wild.
job. I'm so proud of you.
Go on.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So basically right now, the way that it's working, as we stand at RCA, it's still very much in flux. It's a newer department. So as I said before, when I interned, it was at a centralized group, and that doesn't really exist anymore at Sony. So now all of the labels either have their own creative departments similar to the Atlantic model, or they figure it out otherwise. I have no idea. I don't work at those labels, so I don't know what their process is like. But at RCA, yeah, we've built a creative team, which is a lot of fun. And basically what I do now is that I oversee the art, digital animation aspect of it, while my boss, who's our SVP, she oversees a lot more of the bigger picture creative development start of it. And then I kind of take it and make it more, instead of like at a micro level. Like at a micro level rather than a macro level. So we take everything when the photo's already done, and I see what we can do with the artwork, and then with the physical product and all of that fun stuff, and kind of like bring it down the line to start promoting the artist and the song, which is a lot of fun. I am currently helping her with like a lot of the, reaching out to photographers and doing all the bigger picture stuff. But as the team grows, it's going to be more like a separation, not necessarily a separation. We all work together, but more of like, I'm going to oversee a lot more of this instead of dabbling on both sides.
Delegating a lot more. That's awesome.
So for those people who have never worked at a record label, what do you think are some of like the big misconceptions or kind of things that you found kind of the most interesting in terms of people's like expectations versus the real thing?
It's very, very glorified in a good way. Like I had this conception of it too. Like famous people is amazing. We're all people with jobs that are trying to make sure that we're releasing and putting out the best things we possibly can. It's also the fastest paced industry, I feel like, in the entire world. There's really like anything can happen at any given time. I mean, even in the creative world is like wild to think of like agency lifestyle friends that I know that like would sit there and work on a project for like one project for 6 months.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like we have 12 artists coming out with a song on Friday. So we have to make sure that we have everything done for all 12 of those artists. And that includes like assets from front to back artwork, social clips, websites, everything that has to do to release everything on Friday. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I don't think people realize is that like, it's a lot and it's fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we don't have as much time as we would like to put into building out something so great and fun, But
yeah, I think that was definitely interesting for me too. And I think that's also what's different from the late 90s time, right? Because they would record the album, you'd have the music done 6 months to a year, maybe even before it comes out. And you have time to actually flesh that all out, as opposed to now where an artist will be like, this song needs to come out next week. Or there's like, oh, this song got placed in a TV show. It needs to come out right now. And it's like, we all just have to do what we can. And it ends up not being like a very well-planned release. It's just like, you kind of have to just do what you can. So interesting.
Yeah. And sometimes it works and it's great and it's amazing. And we're like, we can kind of like piggyback off of that like success and kind of make it bigger as we go and like work in tandem with how it's growing. Sometimes it doesn't. Like, I can't tell you how many songs we release any given week. I don't even know how many songs we release all the time where it could have been something really great, but it gets buried because, I mean, within the past like 5 years, I would say the music industry. So I don't even know how to navigate, my Spotify anymore because it's just so much.
Yeah, it's very saturated.
Any given time.
Yeah.
Extremely saturated, which is kind of sad for a lot of musicians that like really want to put their work out there, but aren't getting the visibility that they need.
It is. No, it seriously is. I think I've recently went through like my Instagram messages and somebody found me. I'm like, how did you find me? He said, Spotify.
Really?
And I said, you're kidding me. You are kidding. He goes, no. I'm like, oh my God.
That's awesome.
So, but you're right. But thank you. But there's so many, almost too many where you're just like, why is this on here? But hey, it's a business.
Yeah, because there's no real quality control. If you want something up on Spotify, you can easily do it yourself. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. So before we dive deeper into your work, what are some creative concepts that maybe you have done, but not necessarily, but both in Western music and K-pop that you think are really successful and innovative and should be looked at as really great examples of well-executed creative direction?
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I really got into K-pop, and this is how Chris and I like became even closer, because I was like, wait, Chris, you like K-pop? I'm really into it. It was like my COVID discovery of like, I knew obviously as like, you know, BTS was starting to pop off like 2018 or whatever. And I was like, I feel like I would really like this. I just love a boy band. Like it's totally my thing. And it just didn't click. And then all of a sudden during COVID, it was like, that's it. I got it. And now I'm like in it. I'm immersed in it, as you can see. But the thing that really, really got me into the K-pop world is how much everything is planned out and thought out around the concepts. And say like, okay, well, this is like what we're going to do. Here's the music. Here's what the creative is going to look like. Here's what the album is. And kind of like do it all, which is really fun. Has its pros and cons. But I really, really love that. And that's something that I've been trying to see what we can do at RCA. And like how we can kind of get a head start on that creative to make sure that everything's good. But anyway, I digress. So a thing that I noticed in the Western world in K-pop. So K-pop's interesting because I feel like everything's pretty thought out already. So I don't really have one that I can like put a finger on that I'm like, this is perfect. Just because every single one that comes out, I'm like, this is such a cool concept and this is great. And I love how this all kind of ties in together. This is amazing. But on the Western front, what I found recently, at least, was smart. And they kind of, not to say that it took the K-pop model, because it's something that's been doing like looking this for years, but like even like the Taylor Swift idea of this being an entire concept around midnight and a clock and how the vinyls all matched together. And it was just like the K-pop idea where you should get every single version of the album and they all kind of tie in together. And they even had a merch piece that was like the hands of the clock that you can actually put the vinyls on your wall and like actually make it into a clock. And I was like, that's brilliant. Like
that's smart.
Hello. Like things like that like kind of all just tie in to the idea and the concept of what the artist really has is just super smart to me. I mean, Beyonce's been doing it really well too. But she's Beyonce. So I can't really, you know, everybody knows. It's like, I don't need to talk about it. But I'm trying to think of anything else that can kind of come to mind. It'll come to me, but like those are the top two that really, really stand out to me as far as something that seemed like it was really planned and executed. I mean, like even like Billie Eilish, for example, like when she was popping off in like 2018, like her entire concept of like her as a person and then how it related to her music as this like dark, like tomboy-esque type vibe, and it kind of continued on. That whole era of Billie Eilish was really smart because it all tied in together too. So her last album's kind of interesting to me how she kind of like did it like a 180. But yeah, I think that was really smart too, especially for like a developing artist at the time. Because Taylor Swift and Beyonce are obviously established artists. The budget's there, the time, and it's there. And I guess the time is there because they know that their fans would come regardless of when they would release something. But I thought that was also interesting, and at least in a pre-COVID world. It's interesting post-COVID of how everything's been kind of rolling out. So
I was talking to a friend just about like K-pop albums and how crazy they are. And I kind of was just like, look, Western artists can never do this because it costs so much money to produce it over here. Right? What was your first K-pop physical purchase?
Okay, so my first physical purchase was, I think it was a WayV album, to be honest. They were my first
WayV's good.
intro into like really getting into K-pop. Like my friend made me a whole playlist because she really got into it during COVID too, because we also have a K-pop group named APs who are fantastic. And it was like we recently signed them, and we were just trying to like understand a little bit more about the world and kind of get into it. And she got into it. She was like, no, Tonianne, you really need to start listening to it. You're going to love it. And I was like, okay. So she made me an entire playlist of like just songs that she really loved. And the ones that I kind of like kept gravitating towards were WayV songs. So like then I kind of like fell into it. And then she was like, but listen, like you gotta like look at the packaging of everything. And I was like, what do you mean? And like as a designer, I loved packaging. It's like my thing. And it's like, that's what I do now is like really making sure like our physical product is up to par, etc. And I was like, okay, cool. So I looked into it. I was like, wait, what do you mean it's like a full box set? What do you mean it's a bound book with vellum in it and like designer cover? Or like, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, and it's like $20. And I'm like, what? Like it just like blew my mind. So they were the first purchase because I was like, I want to see exactly like what this is. So I bought I think it was Take Over the Moon, the 2. And those are hardbound books with like gold. I mean, I can show you. I don't know. If
bring them out.
Go for it.
Bring them
out. But, I love them. I love them all. I can show them all. I can be here for hours.
Honestly, that's great because a lot of people don't think that a lot of the Americans working on K-pop projects care. So it's good that you actually have invested. So thank you for being invested, like literally. Because I've seen some people, I'm like, you don't care much, do you? It's okay.
I mean, I've seen it too, and I'm like, just don't understand. I mean, like now, like I'm so new. I guess it's been like 3 years now, but like I'm still very new to like it as a whole. Like I haven't been there since the beginning. I haven't been there like for the past like 5, 6, 7 years, you know? So it's like there's still stuff that I'm learning. I know it as it is today and what it was. I mean, that is your guys' forte and less of mine. You could tell me all about it and how it was back then. But yeah, so I'm like slowly learning. But anyway.
It's okay. The purchase. The purchase means you're in it. Yeah, you're in it.
Yes.
So I'm in it. So like this is a hardbound book that's like gold foiled, which is like and
beautiful.
on the edges, it's all foiled on the edges,
like a first edition novel or something. It's like why? But thank you. Yeah.
I mean, as I purchased more and more, I realized like this is like really well done, but it's like a very basic model of like a K-pop album, which is just like it could get very, very wild. But even still, like this is very impressive to just like knowing that like something in the Western world like this would cost like $40. Like this, it's wild. It's wild to me. So the idea of like it happening in the Western world is like I've been trying. I'm like, how can we like really make this something? But a lot of our plants, they're in Europe. Chris knows this very well. They're all in Europe. And we don't only have like our own plants. So it's not like we have our like go-to. We have a couple, I think, that we reach out to depending on like this timeline and et cetera. And we're all, you know, with the rest of the music industry in the Western world. Like all of American labels go to these plants. So we're competing with literally everybody. So that's the first part. The second part is that Western musicians and fans don't really gravitate towards CDs as much because these are all CDs. They're not even vinyl. They all love vinyl. So vinyl is even more expensive to replicate and even longer of a turnaround time. So like that's even another layer of it. And I think all of, at least K-pop groups, I'm assuming that all of their plants are in Korea. So they're just like right there. So like everything gets done like locally and everything just gets shipped across. So completely different world out there.
No, you're right. I remember years ago, there was this group called BAP. Their album was supposed to be chartreuse, but it ended up coming out mauve. They had already signed the mauve ones. And then they had to throw the mauve ones and re-sign the chartreuse ones.
Oh, wow.
Like, I remember watching, like, seeing a Twitter post, like, hey, guys, it was the wrong color. It's like a slight difference. Like, I'm being dramatic with the mauve and the chartreuse. But when I tell you, it was the difference of, like a tan versus pale skin. That's how, like, slight the difference was. And they trashed all those albums to replace them. And I thought, No.
Yeah, the K-pop fans are crazy. Like if
Yeah.
there's a typo, I think wasn't there an NCT thing where like they forgot Doyoung on like one photo, right? And they
well, it
they
was the
printed
back
everything.
of a CD,
Oh,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty
So-
bad.
Those fans were not
The
happy.
stakes are
They're like, you're
high.
mistreating Doyoung.
The
Yeah,
stakes are
poor
so
Doyoung.
high. I mean, I
It's
think
scary.
I think with
That was
Beyonce's recent album, the Renaissance one, it was paper. It wasn't like a crystal cave, but there was like a mini poster. She used to put the mini posters inside of her DVDs. Now there's a mini
Oh.
poster, a larger poster, and a postcard. So she's trying. So Western artists are
Yeah.
trying on a smaller scale, but
They are trying.
That-
Yeah.
but
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
Korea
I
is
just
like, oof.
yeah, they're at a whole another level. It's it's
Wild.
amazing.
It's intense.
Honestly.
Yeah, it's intense.
It's something that's, I love it. I literally purchased so many of them because I'm like, what are they doing next? Like, I need to know like how they printed this one versus the one
Yeah.
that they did last time, and like what size is it? Like they come out with different sizes.
Mhm.
Some of them are like look like magazines. Sometimes they're books. Sometimes they're
Yeah.
boxes. So they have like everything all in it. The thing that it was really interesting to me because it's so different from here is that like I feel like they do everything in like one building. Firstly, like everything is like in one building and they do it all at once. They have their photo shoots. They do whatever they do. But knowing that they can like create like photo books and have 3 different versions of those books,
Mm.
and like all those photos are approved and like they can
Yes.
film all in Wisconsin.
Yes.
I'm like, damn, like we had anything like this, like whew, we would be
So much
golden.
easier.
Like this
Oh
is like
my
a
gosh.
dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that for
Very
you though.
different.
It's also like it's half fandom, but also just half research.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like it's kind of
Yes.
awesome, and that's a very different perspective.
Yeah,
I do
think,
the
for
same
most people.
thing. I look at the girl group like albums. If I have an album or my friends like, I'm getting rid of this album, I don't want it. I'm like, run it here because I'm like, photo
Yeah.
shoot idea.
Yeah.
Like so you're right. It is
It's
very
all
helpful.
inspiration.
It's like a
Yeah,
Pinterest
and-
board in front of you, right in your hand.
Mhm.
Yes. And they come out so often that it's like I'm never bored. So I'm like, what do they do this time? And just kind of like to see how everything plays into each other and how they've done it. And every label is so different too, as far as their quality is concerned.
Mm.
I'm a little biased. However, most of my albums come from the FM universe, which is a wild time, which we have to offline about, by the way, because that's been crazy.
Yes.
But I like recently bought a couple of 17 albums. I will have like 12. 17 albums, and they are like so beautiful that like I never thought like they can be like they have a highlighter in them so you can draw their logo. Like the concept's like, oh my God, it's just so cute. Yeah, it's just like they put
Serious.
so much thought into their albums every single time, and there's like 5 versions of it. So they have 5 different photo shoots, and you get the cards, and it's just the whole world. I can go on about this for literally hours.
It gets creative. Stickers are in Monsta X gets stickers, scratch off tickets with like words of encouragement from the group.
Mm.
Like,
We'll need to talk about Monsta X a little bit because they were signed to Sony.
oh yeah,
I know you didn't work directly on their project, right? But you have.
No, they
heard
were a
about-
different label. Okay, so I was in New York very briefly over the holiday for a meeting. And apparently before the holiday break, one of my designers found a whole box of Monsta X albums, the ones that we released in the States. And I was like, fun, let's see like what it was compared to like how we did it versus like how they do it in Korea.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I would be real pissed as a fan too. Because like literally they had the different versions. Yeah, they had the different versions of all the members. And I was like, okay, cool. And like I opened it and it was like, the same. Everything was the same. The photo cards weren't even quality. Like I would have been, as somebody like that works for that company, and I would have been like, absolutely not. Like, how did this even pass? But,
yeah, that's
I
not
mean,
good.
again,
And then
I had
that's
nothing to do with
just the physical product too. Like I think all the creative, like musically, promotion, marketing wise, it was all a little rough. Yes.
Yeah, it's just a completely different ball game, but it's
It
so
is.
funny because it's exactly what we used to do in the 2000s,
Mhm.
just on like 10 times crazier. Like they took what we did and was like,
yes,
how do we make this even way crazier and more parasocial?
You're so right.
They did it.
B2K had that. B2K had different albums for boy group band right here. B2K had different versions for their members. That's how they kind of determined who's the most popular, and that's why Raspy got treated like crap. But they had different albums. You know what? He's a troubled one. He was getting a lot of poor thing. Yeah, I feel bad for him. But yeah, they did use that as like a litmus test. Who's your favorite? Who's the one we should put in the middle? And everyone's like, I have Niall Mari and I have my K-pop was just like mass produce that. Like they took no dudeness or frick with it.
Yeah. I mean the benefit that they have, which is not necessarily a pro in any way, but the control that they have, like they literally can say, this is what this is, and this is what you're going to do, and this is when it's going to be released, and ta-da, and then that's what they do. Here it's not that at all. Like we are at the beck and call of our artists. We can give as much advice as we want. We can say, hey, like this was what we think could work based on the data, but so how we do it for other artists, etc. But at the end of the day, it's what the artist wants to do. And that's where, sometimes it does work. Sometimes they do take our advice and it works out really well. Sometimes they take our advice and it doesn't work out very well. It goes, it's always like a kind of a lottery, as I like to say. Like you never really know it's really going to hit without like a particular formula. We don't really have one anymore because we do have such a wide variety of genres that are really taking off, and something that would work for Britney won't work for Wiz Khalifa. Like it doesn't really work. While in K-pop, it's kind of, obviously they have their different genres there as well, but it's completely different. It's just a completely different world.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you did mention like with the artists and teams and then your part in the whole situation. So you work hand in hand with the artists and their management and the other teams. One of our CCTV crew members on YouTube asks, in terms of creative design, where do the label duties start and end compared to the duties of an artist's management, marketing, PR? And this comes from @Lamine428. Thank you, Lamine.
Cool. Yeah. It all depends. It depends on the artist. It's like we don't have a particular formula where we're like, this is day one, you get signed and we're going to start here, etc., and then kind of move forward. Some artists come in and they already have a creative team that they like, and we're working with them and hand in hand and trying to make sure that everything gets delivered on the label side that we need in order to do our jobs correctly and promote the way that we need to do. So it's very different. So sometimes we do have like a small artist that comes in, developing artists, and they literally like start from scratch. They have nothing. And we sit down and we talk to them. They're like, what's your vibe? Like, what do you want to portray? Like, what's your music trying to speak to? And we'll try and match them with the best possible photographer or a creative director if we have budget. And, designer, I have a full design team. So sometimes we end up doing the artwork, which is a lot of fun. So then at least like we can work hand in hand with them and they can meet them and kind of like get things done internally as well, which is really fun. And everybody loves it because it's $3.99. But they're really talented. Like I have a really talented team. I make sure that is something that is very important to me to present to artists when they do get signed. So yeah, it all depends on what the situation is. So management comes in. Sometimes they have a team that they really like. If it's a management like group of people that have multiple artists, sometimes they have the same designer working on their artist because it's all in a similar vibe, or they might have their ideas, or they might have, chatted with somebody else like at a recording studio and linked them up. It's like all who in a weird way. But that's how it works.
Yeah.
But as far as like the management's always involved regardless because they're the speakers for the artist sometimes. So a lot of the time the approval process has to go to management and then they go to the artist and they come back. It's like a lovely game of telephone, which is a lot of fun. And then sometimes artists come, exactly as it was. Like we were talking about Beyonce. Beyonce has her entire own creative team. Just everything on her own. Nothing comes through the label from my understanding. She's part of Columbia, so I'm not really sure. But usually like she has her team and they do everything that they want to do and then they tap into the label when they need to. We have some artists like that as well, but there's a lot of artists that we do like set up with creative directors and photographers and making sure that they're really happy with whatever's being built for them. My teams always kind of have a hand in what they're doing, whether they come out with like a new video, like we're cutting clips for them, making sure that that's all their social media stuff. Or if they have a new single coming out and they need some artwork done really quick, like we'll jump in and help out there. So it's like we always kind of have some sort of hand in all of our projects, which is a lot of fun. But as far as like concept to, execution, it all depends on what the artist has to have.
And I think it's like that kind of all across the board as well. Like even on the music side, which is more where I was, like some artists come in, they have their albums done already. And there's really only paperwork left to do for them, like just make sure the producers and everyone are signed off. But some artists do come where, we need to suggest producers, we need to suggest songwriters, and it starts from scratch, and it's a hand-in-hand kind of creative process and development. So yeah, it kind of all just depends. It's not as straightforward as K-pop.
But
how has your experience been working with artists and their teams? And of course, you don't need to name names, but what have been some examples of really great experiences and maybe some not so good experiences?
I mean, the thing that I constantly remind myself as well is that like artists are artists. So they have their opinions and what they like, and you can't read their minds. So sometimes it's a little difficult to exactly execute what they're looking for. But sometimes they're like super chill and they trust us and they're like, yeah, like this is exactly what I was thinking, or like you guys did it way better than I could have ever thought of. I mean, a lot of my background is in web design. So I used to do a lot of websites and digital design and stuff. So it was kind of a little step removed from like the overall kind of creative concepting. But like, I felt like there I had a lot more leeway because that's something that artists didn't really quite understand on how they really worked. So I would kind of like just take whatever like their overall creative is and just make it into like a really beautiful or fun web experience that worked both for them and the marketing teams. Obviously, we need to market it. So I had really good experiences, mostly good experiences with artists because they've been like, yeah, this looks great or this is awesome. Obviously, there are one or two that, get really complicated because, they change their mind like that. I'm trying to think of like one, I don't want to name it. I mean, like I did a really great website once for an artist and they literally like sent me a video message and they were like, Tonianne, thank you so much for this website. It's so beautiful. I love it. It's going to be great for the fans. And it was like, you're welcome. Like it's a really stressful environment of doing like 7 websites in 1 week. It's like something like that. And coming back is like really nice. Or even just like an email that's just like, cool, this looks great. It's like from the artist, you're like, well, I did my job. Like this is awesome. Cool. It works, But yeah, there have been some times where I've done multiple comps of something and it just like doesn't get through. And you're just like, you know what? Not for me. Doesn't work for me. It's okay. That's the thing that you have to like, kind of step away and be like, they're artists. Like they have something in their brain. And if you can't execute it, then like maybe somebody else can, but you can't take anything personally.
Interesting. Yeah. A thank you does go a long way. I always felt the same, like thank yous are not said enough, I think, in general, like in life, but in the music industry, there was very little thank you. But that's very interesting. I was more on the logistical side. So it was very, I was kind of the person that would always say no to things. And I kind of had to, in my role, like I had to be that realist and I had to be the one that had to kind of,
you had to say
turn
no,
their dreams down.
Like this, you're asking for way too much. Do it with what I gave you.
And mine was not as fun a role. Like I think for you, at least you get to, I think because you're also creative, it's kind of at least like 2 artists kind of working together on something as opposed to one person who's just like, no, you don't have the money for that.
That's true. I mean, we do have to say, no, we don't have the money for that. There are times when people are like, I want to use this photographer. And we're like, absolutely not. Like you will get no photos.
Better find a Walmart brand.
One. We will go to CVS. We're going to take it on that white bag. But yeah, there's times where I have to say no, or like even think that they want to create as far as like their album or like their packaging, where they're like, we want this cool, fun thing. And it's like, if you want your album released and in stores in a, proper time frame, I don't think we're going to be able to do that. Or even on the website of things, we're like, I want my face to be AI generated. Like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that internally here. That's not something we're really well versed in quite yet. So yeah, there have been times where they have like these grand ideas, and sometimes they're like, okay, cool, and then they kind of do it themselves, and it's like, all right, if you can figure it out, awesome. But
talking about these concepts, we have another question from an Album a Day podcast, which is at a 3-day podcast on Twitter, and they ask, do you prefer to bring a concept to the artist and their team for consideration, or would you rather flesh out a concept brought to you?
Personally, I think it's a lot easier, definitely not easier, but a lot better to know you're going to get exactly what the artist wants when they think of the concept themselves. It's their image and it's their music of what they're presenting. And we can say, okay, here, this is what we can do with this concept, and kind of go from there, which is a lot simpler than trying to like figure something out of being like, this is a cool concept. I don't know if it's going to work for you, but do you like this? And then it not feeling genuine to them. So definitely we like to hear what the artist has to say, or what they want to do, or what they think is fun and cool and innovative. And then we can try and like figure out how to do that, rather than being like, here's something really dope. Do you want to do this? And then like, if they hate it, or like if they do it and they don't like it, and then it just doesn't fit like them, then it's like, oops. Like we do less of that though. Like it's not usually the case. Like we're not usually bringing a concept to them and saying like, you have to do this, like a la K-pop.
Right.
So
see, like as a songwriter, we get like, I want you to write a hit. I want you something that feels like a vibe. What are some words, like some really just lazy descriptors that you've received that were so vague, but in their mind, they knew exactly what the hell they were talking about? Like, I want you to write a hit.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, like,
we get a lot of words like, oh, can you make it like really edgy? We're like, edgy. What's edgy to you? Edgy is a big one, which is fun. But my definition of edgy is not your definition of edgy. So it's like, edgy is a very broad term. Can you set some examples, please?
Right.
Because I don't really know what your edgy is. Because edgy could be like, like dark and gloomy, like guy with a guitar, like on a bridge, like I don't know, like I don't.
Or it could be the
whatever,
opposite. It'd
like,
be crazy colors.
Right.
Yeah. Abstract
exactly.
stuff.
Or being like grungy and like bright purple and blacks, and it's like edgy can be so many different things. So like that's one that definitely comes to mind. Edgy. I mean, cool. Like, can you make it cool?
Cool.
What? Like,
lazy. You think you probably get it like so much though. You probably get it so much, and people think I told them what I wanted. I'm like, you need to give me a list of metadata. I don't care how you figure it out. Give me something.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, it kind of used to be easier because there used to be like a general like aesthetic for the type of artists that would come out. Like the small young pop singer songwriter had a general like vibe about them, where you're like, okay, I could pick 3 different ways of doing this, and all 3 ways they're probably gonna like it, or they're gonna pick one out of 3. And then there was like hip hop artists, where it's like, okay, I know like these 3 things are going to like really relate to the hip hop artist. So it's like nowadays it's just like everything's kind of like mixed into each other.
Oh my God,
so it's been really interesting trying to figure out the creative mindset of a lot of what the artist wants.
Right.
But yeah, cool, edgy, clean is a good word. Can you make it clean? Okay. Clean can mean many different things too. So
that's great.
So we get those all the time.
Awesome. Well, an Album a Day podcast also asked, is there anything going on in the field that you would like to enhance your knowledge about? And what are some current upcoming trends within the music industry that people will see more of in the coming years in the creative field?
Well, one thing that obviously sticks out is definitely the AI stuff. More and more artists have been using the AI generators to create their artwork, which has been interesting on the legal front.
Yeah, that's it's risky.
Yeah, very risky. Not only risky, it's just like we kind of don't really know how to handle it as far as like credit is concerned. I mean, like before, like you have a designer or you have a photographer and you get the rights for that stuff. But as far as this AI stuff, like we don't really know how to touch on it on a legal front yet entirely. I mean, we kind of have been figuring it out, but yeah, it's been interesting trying to just like see like when an AI artist comes in or artwork comes in from an artist and we're like, okay, let's figure this out. So that's been something that will probably be more and more seen on artwork, which is both a good and a bad thing, I think. I mean, there's obviously a debate about like AI art and stuff that we don't have to get into, but so that's been something. And then like just still like the mix match of genres as far as like creatives concerned, like a lot of it is taken from like the 2000s now. So it's like you see a lot more of that like Y2K inspired art meets nævis, meets like a little bit of 80s, meets all of these different types of like the best aspects of each one of the decades kind of put together into something really cool and innovative, which is a lot of fun. I've been noticing a little bit of that. I think that's pretty much all that's coming to mind right now as far as things that are coming through that I've seen. For sure.
Right before I left label, I know we were talking about NFTs. That was kind of right when that whole conversation was going on. I know you were kind of leading a lot of the conversation as well. So what do you think? I know it's died down a little bit in terms of people talking about it in the public, but people definitely are still working on it. I know a lot of people working at startups that are into it. So what do you see kind of happening with that still?
I'm not really sure. We've kind of taken a step back from the NFT space internally. We were kind of like trying to figure it out. I mean, I think we helped Kings of Leon do something with their album at the time. I think you helped work on that thing. But yeah, we've definitely taken a step back just because it did kind of die down. But a lot of our artists are doing things on their own. So like you'll probably see things coming from our artists like with their own individual projects and what they're doing with different partners on their end rather than it coming from the label end. So we really haven't touched in the NFT space since that time. So I don't really have much to say on NFTs at the moment. Felt that. Yeah, a lot of artists are getting to like Web3 and then like K-pop now. Some of it too. Even though some of it's like not good, like Dreamcatchers is not great. Some of it is almost like AI generated. People are like, isn't that like a deviant artwork that you guys like rip from the internet? So it's starting to turn into like this thing where they're just trying to like a little bit of a cash grab. I mean, that's what it's for. But K-pop is like, what technology? We have the fastest internet here in Korea. Let's like, you know, it's turning into like this thing. So it should be interesting to see what they do with it and how everyone else responds. Now K-pop music is like, what are they doing over there? So I'm curious to see that.
Also, as an SM stan, have you heard about how aespa's virtual member, or I don't know?
Oh, Nævis is getting
debuting as an artist.
She's being transmuted as an artist. Not the
I
face.
did not
that face
hear
is amazing.
There's going to be a virtual artist debuting under SM this year. So let's see how that goes.
They might do it the way they did the KDA roll-off for League of Legends, where they just have marks. And you have to kind of stand like in this gap. Like imagine there is Nævis between Chris and I. Like, hello, Nævis.
Yeah.
You know,
like a VTuber, like like VTubers.
Like that. Yeah.
I hate it.
You know what? I think in Asia, they were always just like that. Even with like Hatsune Miku.
Oh, yeah. She opened for Gaga.
That's what I'm saying.
That was bizarre. I was like, no one knew what was going on. Yeah.
I mean, like Gaga? No, Gaga. That's not her. You know,
like I don't know what I'm looking at, but you know what? On brand for Gaga to have somebody like that.
Yeah, it's with it. Definitely.
But yes, there was that boy group that debuted. I think last year with the
one member.
He reacted to another virtually created group. The member reacted to this virtual girl group. It was just like some weird, like Inception meta mess I've never seen in my life. He was like, oh no. Well, and I'm like, not you reacting to the fake boy reacting to the fake girl.
I don't know. There's something about that. She's like, doesn't, and like, honestly, like, I don't even like look at that. Like, it's weird. the weirdest part though was the other members that were real people, and then they had to like compete with this AI that they like made like beautiful, and it's like, guys, like what? I don't know.
I can't.
She said they made him beautiful, but it's true.
I mean, it's like that's what they're trying to do, and it's like you have to compete with something that's fake, and then like as a fan, like who do you bias the AI one or the real guys?
That is crazy. You know what? See, in America, it's so much easier. It's only like individual artists, like little Michaela. It's just her, but she actually has selfies, and everyone's. I don't know how they do it. Like it's just now people buy into it.
I mean, that's something that's a little more innovative. Again, it's a one person type of scenario where other people aren't really affected in the whole concept. I don't hear. I don't know.
It's weird.
It's
weird. Yeah, not for me.
I don't know if I'm too old.
But the packaging might be interesting.
Could you imagine? You never have to take pictures. Like the metadata will be like all the code. Edgy, cool, dark,
virtual,
sleek, clean character. You know, like minimalistic.
Who knows? It may be like a little like hologram like comes out, and it's just like the member.
Could you imagine
the
the packaging?
Like,
oh my god!
But you know, I would purchase that. I would put my money
like dance on your. Your desk.
Like can we get that for everyone?
You were saying like, that's something that you aren't getting into right now. But, there are some people coming up, watching this, listening to you saying, oh my gosh, she didn't even know about K-pop, or she didn't even know about certain things, but she's learned and she's developed herself so well. So what kind of advice would you have for anyone hoping to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, I would kind of just like, if you wanted to get into like music or like design in music, or just like be interested in what's actually happening in the world. I mean, keep your eyes open. Like it's harder today. It's definitely a lot harder today than it was back then. And back then is literally like only 10 years ago. Like it's not even like, it was like in my day, like 30, it's literally like moving so fast at any given time where, if you're a creative, or creator, photographer, or designer, like what's been really helpful and how like I've been finding different artists is honestly like Instagram, like make sure you have a portfolio, make sure you're putting your work out there. Like we're going to consistently find different people based on their individual skill sets. So before, when I was in school, it was like you kind of had to do a little bit of everything. Like you kind of had to get into different aesthetics in every single possible way. Now it's very much like you have your own thing, where it's like, you're really good at this particular aesthetic, or you're really good at like typography, or you're really good at this. And it's like, we look for those individual people that can really hone in on the thing that we're looking for. If I'm hiring in, I look for somebody that had a little bit of diversity in their portfolio as far as creative is concerned, just because we do work on a roster of all different kinds of artists. Like we touch hip hop, rap, pop, country, not K-pop, because they do their own creating. We know this. But yeah, like the genres just like are so widespread of like, you have to be able to adapt in a way. But yeah, if you want to kind of like be a freelancer and do your thing, like definitely put your stuff out there, like get out there. That's something that I didn't really do because I was so internal on it and everything. And Instagram didn't happen until I was already like halfway in the music industry anyway. So it was a little bit different for me. But yeah, that's how we're looking for certain like individual artists, at least.
You are working with artists and their teams and everything every day. So what are some best practices for working most effectively with a creative team?
Just trust us. I think that is a big thing. Everybody thinks that they're creative. Sometimes they are, I'm not saying that they're not. But there's a lot of like, trust that gets, brought into the equation. And if you don't trust us, then it's hard. If you have your own opinions and you kind of want to stick to what you know and you are used to or whatever, it kind of like, it could either be fine or it can like stunt you, and we're here to help. And we have our degrees in design, and there's certain ways we do things because that's how it works. I mean, granted, like creative is very like broad of a thing, and you can go very many different ways with it. But there are reasons why we make certain decisions to make sure that it's the best that it can be. So I think it's just a little bit of just, you know, a good collaboration conversation would be amazing. Just to be like, hey, this is what you're looking for. This is what we will bring to the table, and this is what we suggest. And if you're, you know, the honesty is also really, really key, because don't just say yes because you think that this is all you can have. It's you're like, I don't like any of these options that you're giving me, whether that be creative directors or photographers or design comps or whatever. Like, we want to make sure that we're giving you what you need. So definitely like be honest. I mean, like in a kind way, like, you know, just be like, this is trash. Be like, say like, okay, like this is not what I was looking for, but actually this one is going in the right direction of like what I was thinking. And then we can kind of like figure out based on, you know, the feedback that we're getting. Yeah, I think that would be very, very important to have like just a discussion with us and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah. And I think the big understanding is like, we're all working for you.
Yeah.
You know, like we're trying to help you. And there's a lot. Yeah, I definitely experienced that a lot where people were kind of fighting against us. And it's like, no, like we're on your team here.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to support you. So I think that's definitely a big thing that people need to always keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah. We want you to succeed, you know, like whether that's a personal feeling of being like, no, we really love you. We want to make sure that like you get exactly what you're here for. Or on a business level, like we want you to succeed.
Yeah.
Like beside you,
seriously.
please get a hit. Like we want you to get that. You know what I mean? So it's like we're not here to like, you know, be your enemy in any sort of way. You know, I mean, there are certain opinions and certain artists have had bad experiences with certain labels, and you know, I can't speak to that. I'm not on that side of the label system. I don't work in A&R. I don't really know how any of that really goes down. It's just what I hear, you know. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like we're here to, you know, help you. That's what we want to do. And that's why, you know, we're doing it for you and music. So that's why we're here. Like anybody that really works in a label is there because they want to be there. Like they love music and they want to make sure that we're putting out the best that we can.
Awesome. So we are a music podcast.
We are?
You clearly have great taste. So please recommend us some music. What songs are on repeat for you right now? What should our listeners listen to?
Okay, so little bit of a shameless plug, but it's really good. And we've been sitting on it for a minute and I'm so glad it's out. But everybody should listen to Lottery by Lotto because it's a hit and it's a jam. And I'm so excited that it's finally out there because it's like the perfect pop song that I've heard in a minute. So definitely Lottery. It's so good. And then obviously Pink Panther's Ice Spice.
Just talking about her.
That song. Yes. Pink Panther's is Season-y. We love a fellow NCT fan.
Yes, she is.
So we stand Pink Panthers. In the K-pop space, I've been listening to a lot of XG lately. They're really fun.
Yeah.
And I know this is surprising for me because I'm not usually a girl group stan, but like I really like XG. I think they're fun. They're good. They're a good group.
They came out
boy
group, but like girl singing. Like their songs are so laid back.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's it.
I was just saying
that's why I'm like, yeah, I like that.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, they feel like a boy group a little bit. Like the way they're producing their songwriters are a lot of like R&B, K-R&B singers. And I was like,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so they've been fun. I mean, and all their songs are in English, so it's super adaptable for like all of your friends that aren't K-pop fans. You can be like, listen to this. And they'll be like, I like it. And be like, well, K-pop. And then trying to think. I mean, I recently got back on the Baekhyun bandwagon. I love Baekhyun. And he just came back from the military, so I'm expecting to come back soon.
Well, thank you so much, Tonianne, for hanging out with us today.
Well, yeah. Thank you. I'm so honored to be on this podcast. Thanks.
Yes. Well, welcome to the CCTV crew. It's nice to have another crew member. Would you like to plug anything else that, anything that came out or any projects before we wrap up?
I don't really have much to plug, I guess. I mean, you can follow me on social media. I'm never really on social media at all.
Good for you.
I'm rarely on there, but if you want to follow me, I'm at Tonianne Tartaro on everything, Instagram, Twitter.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and let us know what other aspects of the music industry you'd like to hear about. You can join our crew at patreon.com to hang out with us, and please comment below or message us at CCTV Pops on all social media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications for our YouTube channel. And if you're enjoying the show on a podcast platform, please give us a follow, rating, and a review. We do read those. Thank you. Until next time, that's Chris.
That's Shan.
And that's Tony.
And we are CCTV. Bye.
Bye.